Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our first quarterly virtual coffee talk series, where we're going to be covering and discussing a number of relevant IT topics that are going on within the IT industry. Thank you for joining us for our first event, Crafting Your Cloud Calling Migration Strategy. Just kicking off into our agenda. So we're going to be covering how communication systems challenge and impact our organizations today, how to choose the right cloud calling solution for your organization, how Cloud Contact Center can enhance your solution, whichever option you may choose, and how you can simplify your cloud migration journey and build it out in something that's more comfortable for you. We will have a short question and answer section at the end of the presentation. If you could please type your questions into the question box on the right-hand side of your screen, and we will address them at the end of the presentation. And then we will end our event with our raffle for the Microsoft Surface Go 2 tablet, which we're very excited about. So our presenter for today is Brian Pagluso. He is the Director of Solutions and Innovation at ATSG, and he is our thought leader and all things knowledge related to unified communications and collaboration. So I'm going to kick it off to Brian, and he's going to get us started for this morning.
Thanks, Stacy. Great intro. Appreciate it. So, like Stacy mentioned, we'll hit some Q&A if anybody has any towards the end. Fair amount of content that I'll go through, high level, right? I'll just kind of buzz through a lot of stuff. A lot of the stuff you guys are already going to be familiar with. But I think just some highlights around, why we're having this conversation in general, right? So what we typically notice when we're starting to talk to different customers is, when we start going down this whole UC journey, this whole UC roadmap that everybody's trying to put together, the first question we always ask is, hey, why are you even looking at this? What are some of the issues that you're having today? What are some of the challenges that you're dealing with? So cost is always a big thing, right? Especially when you're maintaining multiple systems, different vendors, legacy systems, potentially trying to RMA a spare part for something that's been end of life for a long time, right? They're out there, right? We see it every day. From a calling experience, especially when you have a large organization, things are distributed, nothing's really unified. It's to some degree, right? But you don't necessarily always have that on-net feeling, that on-net ability to just grab somebody that's available. And then from a mobility standpoint, again, big component of what we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, especially now that COVID's been around for, the last 8 months, right, since March. How do we have the same type of user experience for people that are no longer sitting in the office? Because nobody's in an office anymore. I mean, honestly, I haven't been in an office again since March 12th, right? And how do I maintain the same level of relationship and interaction I normally have on a day-to-day basis with the team that works for me and folks I work for and work with and customers? So again, those are the big challenges that really everybody's seeing. And really the answer to that is a solid unified communications roadmap, regardless of the vendor, regardless of the manufacturer, right? We're going to talk specifically around Cisco today, but this could apply to anybody, right? People want to be integrated. People want something that's going to have a single cost factor, so typically an OpEx model, right? And then we start talking about contact center, and then how do I not only have better interactions with my internal folks, on a voice and an IM and all that other stuff, but now how do I interact with my customers, my partners, my vendors, and have better interactions with those folks? So that's a lot of the stuff we're going to go into. Again, high level, broad brush, and we could dive in at the end. Next, Stacy, please. Cool, thanks. So again, we try to stay away from directly talking about technology. Now for this, I'll obviously dive in. It's like what I like to do. But when you're starting to talk to customers, we want to understand, how we can make a business impact, right? How we can drive business outcomes as a result of deploying what I'm going to say is pretty strategic technology solutions. So again, we're starting to talk about improving employee experience, improving the ability to communicate remotely, improving that interaction with our customers. So we have a very large online pet retailer, and I'm sure you guys could all figure out who that is without saying any names. Their entire business is customer interaction through their contact center. And every single day they're challenging us, asking us, hey, how can we improve our experience with our customers? And they're definitely keeping us on our toes, right? Coming up with these really, what I'm going to say is super creative solutions for customer interaction, back-end support. How do you initially triage a call coming in before that caller even gets answered, right? Before you even start talking to that person, so you already have, what you're going to perceive as the right answer for that person as soon as you talk to them on the phone. And from a vendor management standpoint, right? How do you consolidate all these different vendors that you have out there, especially in a legacy environment, to a single consolidated vendor, or at least a lot less vendors? So it makes that overall experience easier. And then, unfortunately, I have to say, you can beat up on one less vendor than you do today. Next, Stace. So we have a few different packages within our overall portfolio of calling, right? We've been doing unified communications and contact center for a long time, for going on 20 plus years. This whole cloud model, I'm going to say 6-7 years ago, it really exploded. And I'm going to say at the time, it was more of a buzzword, right? And CXO level individuals were like, okay, what does this really mean to us? What's it going to do for my business? How's it going to make me, look better to the organization? How's it going to make the organization better? How's it going to improve our experience? So I think what you started to see initially, and I'm sure everybody would agree with this, was a move to the cloud was more focused around back-end applications, SharePoint, Office 365 as examples, right? and nobody was really necessarily willing to move a lot of their business critical functions out to the cloud right away. In my opinion, voice is a critical business function. I think everybody's going to agree with that as well. So again, we have a couple of different ways that we do that. So one is that I'm going to talk about is going to be WebEx calling. Then we have what we refer to as our Ready Cloud Cisco UCM cloud service backend. And then I'll go through a couple of different cloud contact center options that you guys could consider. Next, Stace. Okay. And here's, first one I'm going to hit is WebEx calling, and I'll kind of go through like how you make that decision around what's the right solution. Next. Okay. So let's say you're, a large SMB, right? You have maybe 1,000 users, maybe a little less, maybe a little more, and you're looking for that type of experience where, you know what, the only thing I want to have on my prem, if any, is going to be a physical handset. I might just deploy soft clients, but I don't care where those soft clients are. I don't want to deal with PSTN charges anymore. I don't want to deal with voice gateways, digital PRIs, whatever it might be, right? I want all that stuff off of my prem, and I want to make sure that regardless of where my user is, and regardless of that modality, so again, a physical handset or a soft client on a mobile device, whatever, they still have the same experience no matter what. And again, overall size, and there's a couple other factors in, but typically this might tell us, hey, you know what, the right model for you could be WebEx calling. Flip to the next phase. Thanks. So what is WebEx calling? Again, like I mentioned, right, it's a full over-the-top solution. So if you're looking for a comparison, think like the Ring Centrals, the 8x8s of the world, that type of overall connectivity model, where the only thing, again, that your client needs to connect to the back end is an internet connection. Now, you're going to want to obviously have diverse internet connections on your network. You're going to want to make sure that your network is somewhat resilient, QoS, SLAs, all that other stuff, right? But the difference between the WebEx calling product and some of those others I mentioned, again, Ring Centrals, the 8x8s, whatever it might be, is that WebEx calling is let's call it the derivative of what BroadSoft used to be. So anybody that's not familiar, BroadSoft over the last 15, 20 years, the major primary player when it came to cloud unified communications, right? All the service providers deployed it. You can get on it through a back-end solution like that from, again, you fill in the blank service provider. Cisco acquired that company when they were starting to get their toe in the water when it came to cloud calling. They took that internal, they deployed some innovation into that platform and relaunched it as WebEx calling about 18 months ago. What that system is and why it's superior to some of the other guys I mentioned before, full enterprise PBX capabilities. So it's not, anybody that's familiar with Cisco Call Manager or Avaya Communications Manager, it's not exactly the same, right? There's, it's not tuned to be that type of solution for hundreds of thousands of users. However, a lot of those features and innovations have been built into the WebEx calling platform, native call queuing, typical hunt groups, some basic, very basic IVR treatment. So a lot of those things that some of those other plain old vanilla PBXs just don't have. Next, Stace. And again, sorry, my screen just flipped out. Let me just hide that. Sorry. Just to give you a quick high level, hey, what does this look like? Like I mentioned, right, on the customer prem, on your prem, you're going to have endpoints. They can be soft clients. They can be physical handsets. They will support all of the Cisco, if anybody's familiar with Cisco, all the 8800 series, 7800 series, 6800 series phones, as well as the WebEx Teams soft client. That becomes your soft phone, or can be your soft phone. Your access network, that would be your internet connection. Like I mentioned, you want to have some kind of geodiverse solution for users that are on your network to get out to the internet. Either that's redundant circuits or redundant routing paths, right? All the call control, signaling, everything goes back to the back end, which is Broad Cloud, Cisco WebEx, the WebEx cloud, right? And then through that cloud, you have PSTN access. What's also innovative about this solution is that you don't have to go with a cloud PSTN provider. You could deploy on-site gateways. The reason that's not only innovative but pretty important is because you may have existing telco contracts that you can't get out of. You may have integrations that you need to do into legacy systems as a hybrid approach, right, during a migration. So you don't necessarily have to use a cloud provided PSTN connection. You could always have it local as well, or you can do a split of the two. So you do have options. Next, please. Okay, scenario two. This is one that I'm pretty near and dear to you. I've helped develop our internal solution around it with a few other key folks, and again, we're using this with some of our larger customers right now. It's called UCM Cloud, right? So we brand it as our Ready Voice or Ready Cloud solution. What that is on the back end, and again, if anybody's familiar, it's Cisco Call Manager on the back end in geo-diverse deployment in Cisco's data centers, so hardened facilities. What I'll do is I'll kind of step through like what that kind of, actually, you know what, let me just jump to that right now. Probably might make this easier. But again, existing PSTN commitments, certain types of connectivity models, et cetera, right? So that's going to drive how you're going to connect into this solution. You're going to have all of the same capabilities that you have with a traditional UCM model today. You can have SRST for those that are familiar with that. Multiple PSTN connections across your enterprise. You can have cloud-based PSTN. You can integrate with all the different things that you integrate with today, whether it's call recording, contact center, emergency services, fill in the blank, right? So again, all those things that you can do today with your enterprise UCM PBX, same applies going forward. And flip to the next, Stacy, please. I think this was important to show too. It'll help me kind of talk through what that back end, the connectivity model, and really fill in the blanks. So at the very top of the slide, what you'll see is the Equinix data centers. Now, those are geodiverse locations across San Jose, Dallas. So again, your traditional Equinix data centers that I'm sure everybody's familiar with. What we've done is built out like an aggregation point within those facilities. So now if you look at the bottom of the drawing, it shows your client prem connecting out to our environment. What that really is going to be a connection that can be completely up to your discretion. It can be MPLS. Typically, it's going to be SD-WAN, right? That's kind of the way everybody's going. That's the way the industry's going. That's what we would lead with, but it really comes down to you if your requirements are super tight around security, guaranteed SLA, et cetera, right? You might say, hey, I need dedicated MPLS circuits, which is fine. What you're going to do is connect into our environment, which is also hosted in those data centers. Again, hardened environment built out for specific purpose. What'll happen is your connectivity will come into those data centers. So we become an extension off of your enterprise wide area network. Again, regardless of the connectivity model, MPLS, IPsec, whatever, totally up to you. And then what we do is drop you into your own VRF. So you're physically and logically separated from every other client. So again, SOC 2 Type 2 compliance, it's all there, right? So you don't have to worry about security, but it's always a conversation starter, right? So your own VRF into the client backend. Now, the biggest difference that you're going to see, well, a couple things that are obvious, right? You're no longer hosting virtual applications or physical servers. That's all on Cisco. The other thing that you're going to see is that you're going to get rid of the requirements around service releases, upgrades. That's all handled on the back end by ATSG and Cisco. Now, we also wrap around a day 2 support plan with this. So we're monitoring your applications, we're monitoring the environment, we're monitoring not just uptime and availability, but we're also looking at overall thresholds on all the different applications as well as connectivity coming in. So, right, we're guaranteeing availability of a 4 nines availability out to you, which translates to like 50 minutes of downtime per year. But honestly, you should never see that because it is a very, very, very redundant solution. Next, case. Thanks. Just wanted to highlight really quick some of the different endpoints that are supported by either of these solutions, whether it's WebEx calling or UCM Cloud. So all of your traditional Cisco handsets, all of the different Cisco soft clients that are out there today, and then from a video endpoint standpoint, right, you can register those devices to the UCM Cloud backend, so Call Manager on the back end. You could also cloud register those devices. there's reasons why you might want to go one way or another, right? That we could dive into at some point if you guys want to have a deeper conversation after this one. But again, there's a full support for a lot of diverse and different clients out there. Cool. Thanks. So again, really benefit wise, um, it's it's there's a process around deployment, right? So we can get you guys up and running pretty quickly. It's not like you have to add additional staff. Now, in my opinion, honestly, out of all this, what stands out to me is that it's a big relief from a financial perspective. So we try to make this as much of an OpEx model as we can. Now, it can certainly be CapEx, right? You might say, hey, you know what? I want to capitalize my endpoints, or if I'm going to go with on-prem gateways, right? I just want to buy those out. It makes more sense. We do talk to some customers that for them, having cash on hand is easier than trying to get a lease or finance something, right? So, but again, that's a bigger conversation, but that really is an important model to a lot of folks, right? Going to a full OpEx model. Cool. Now I'll jump into contact center quickly. So hit the next one, Stace. Okay. So again, like I mentioned before, right? Client intimacy, customer interaction, those are the buzzwords that you start hearing around contact center these days, as opposed to, hey, I just need somebody to ring into a big call center or answer the phone. People want more of a personalized experience when they're calling into a contact center or a customer care center. A big reason why you might walk away from somebody is, hey, you know what? I've been calling, fill in the blank insurance company forever. I get the standard IVR. I sit on hold. Finally, I get through to somebody, and even though they ask me for my account number and my social security number and everything else along the way, by the time I actually talk to a live person, they're asking me for all this stuff again. Well, you know what? I'd rather call fill in the blank insurance company where the second I call in, they see the number that I'm calling in from. And hey, whether I have to wait on the phone for a couple of minutes or I do a callback where they just call me back automatically when an agent becomes available, which is super convenient. By the time I'm talking to a live person, they're already like, hey, Mr. Pegluso, how are you? I see you're calling about account number, blah, 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 blah. Last time you called was this. And we noticed that you were on our website doing X, Y, and Z. Are you calling about this, or that, right? So they're already provided with a lot of business intelligence about the person they're about to speak to before they even get on the phone with that person. And that's, again, that's a huge, huge, huge reason why somebody might switch from one brand to another. And again, super, super high level conversations that we're having every day with a lot of different customers about how do we improve that overall experience for folks trying to connect into their contact center. And you'll notice I didn't say call into their contact center because I think everybody's aware it's no longer just a voice channel only, right? You can connect in with text and chat. You can have call outs, right? There's a whole different omni-channel approach to contact center these days than there was just not even 10 years ago. Next stage. Thank you. So when you start talking about what kind of contact center options there are out there, there's a whole bunch. There's your traditional premise-based, and again, if we're talking Cisco, it's going to be Unified Contact Center Express. A super powerful solution, but it's more customized down to some of the smaller contact centers, up to 400 agents. Still handles a lot of those same features, functions that I mentioned, so outbound capability, text, chat, etc. However, it has to be logically tied into a Cisco UCM backend. Now you start talking about Contact Center Enterprise, which was born out of ICM. So Cisco acquired ICM a long time ago. They built that into their overall platform. Now the power of CCE, whether you're looking at full CCE or package CCE, and there is a little bit of a difference, is that you don't need a call manager on the back end. It could really be any PBX that's out there, scales up to tens of thousands of users, right? And it can tie into Avaya and Cisco and others, right? If you had to, through a peripheral gateway. So those are the on-prem solutions. Hybrid solutions are more along the lines of, how do I have a contact center that's currently on-prem and migrate to the cloud? So you get into a hybrid scenario where you can start tying in some of the cloud approaches, which would be WebEx Contact Center and WebEx Contact Center Enterprise. So think of the WebEx Contact Center Enterprise as the same exact thing as CCE on-prem. However, you're no longer hosting it. You no longer need all those different boxes and applications and VMs and owning of licenses and all that other stuff that you have to do with a traditional contact center. All that stuff's in the cloud. Again, you're basically taking that on-prem application and turning it into an as-a-service offering based on an OpEx. WebEx Contact Center, a little bit different. So it's not exactly the same as Contact Center Express in that it's a different application. So that's also one of those ones that came along with the BroadSoft acquisition. And there's been tons of innovation, again, poured into it over the last few years. But that is a full cloud-based contact center offering, over the top, again, relies on internet connectivity, but it's no longer bound to a PBX on the back end. So if you want to visualize that, think of a cloud, for lack of a better term, and all the application component that is sitting in the cloud. When a call comes in, that 800 number could come into your local prem. You would hairpin the call back up to the WebEx Contact Center data centers, where all of that triage is done, whether it's prompt and collect or queuing or whatever that IVR treatment's going to be. And then the call is delivered to an agent, but it no longer has to go back to an agent connected to a PBX that's directly connected into the WebEx Contact Center application. That agent could be any agent sitting on any device. So this could be my agent device, my cell phone, my desk phone, whatever. It really depends on how you program it. So you no longer have those physical boundaries and requirements on a backend PBX with WebEx Contact Center. And again, either of those can be deployed in a hybrid manner with an on-prem solution today. Next, Stace. Thanks. So as I mentioned, right, we have all of these different options within our overall contact center portfolio. So WebEx Contact Center, I mean, these are, I'm not going to say dated. These are a little bit older numbers, but in reality, WebEx Contact Center can scale up to a couple of thousand users. Cloud PCCE, so CCE in the package version, which is just a different footprint. That is something that we would host. So I showed you before kind of what our data center looks like. You have an ATSG based component of the Equinix data center. We would host those applications there. And then WebEx Contact Center Enterprise, it's an application that Cisco actually hosts, kind of like the UCM Cloud backend, and then it's delivered out to customers. But honestly, we try to stay away from that for a few different reasons, right? It drives some additional complexities out to the customer and some additional financial requirements out to the customer, to be honest with you. So normally we're either driving WebEx Contact Center, again, based on requirements, or our cloud PCCE model. Cool, thanks, Stace. Really quick, right, I talked about how do you get there. So you can go from an on-prem to a hybrid to a full cloud model. Normally we're talking to folks that obviously they have something in place today, so they're typically brownfield environments. It's rare that we get to go in and just jump into a greenfield environment. So the question always comes up like, hey, okay, you know what, everything you're telling me sounds really good, but I have all this stuff today and I can't just like throw it away or hang it up because I need to maintain business, I need to maintain my operations. So if you were going from, let's say, simplest model would be, we have fill in the blank PBX today, Cisco, Avaya, whatever, doesn't really matter. And we're going to go to this UCM cloud thing that you keep talking about, but how do we maintain integration? How do we maintain that on-net experience? So one user's on Avaya today, they're moving over to Cisco. How do we make sure that the way they interact with the person that's sitting right next to them, how do they still just pick up the phone, 4-digit dial? So what we'll do is, to get down into some of the nuts and bolts, we'll set up SIP trunks, H323 trunks, some kind of IP connectivity into the other system, even if we have to do it through a gateway or whatever. So then as we're moving users from one system to the next, they're still directly connected to the other users that they normally interact with, but now they're getting additional features and entitlements and enablements, right? And that's when you start talking about not just dial tone, you start talking about unified communications, soft clients, IAM presence, etc. And it's a phased migration, obviously, for a lot of folks until we get to that full cloud model, regardless of what that cloud's going to look like. Next, and Q&A. Sorry, I know I buzzed through a lot of that stuff high level, and any one of those slides I can go into for probably 10 minutes at a clip, but Obviously, I want to be respectful of everybody's time too.
Thank you, Brian. I actually have a question. So is a migration possible when most of the organization is working remotely?
It is. It's the same thing I just mentioned, Stacy. So really what that comes down to is coordination. But even if somebody's working remotely, they're still connected to some type of device. Now, again, if you're working remotely and you're on a legacy PBX, it makes it even easier, to be honest with you. And the reason around that is because you probably are just working off your cell phone, right? Like if you have legacy digital systems, which is really what a driver could be, you're probably not going to have an enterprise or a corporate device at your home, right? So somebody's going to be calling you on your cell phone. So now you say, okay, you know what? I want to implement this next gen technology. It's really easy to deploy a client connected to that system to anybody sitting, again, anywhere.
Great. And do you find that most organizations take it as in a multi-phase approach where they take a hybrid model and move on?
I'm going to say if any client out there has anything in place today, 100% of the time it's going to be a hybrid approach. Like I said, it's super rare that you come across a complete greenfield environment, so you always have to come up with some kind of migration strategy.
Great. Awesome. Thank you.
Welcome.
All right. So now we are going to get into our raffle. So Naya Urena is going to start sharing her screen, and we're going to draw the name for the winner of the Microsoft Surface tablet. All right. A little check in the box. And our winner is Alex. Awesome. Alex Majid. Thank you so much for joining, everybody. Alex, we will reach out to you after this event just to coordinate the address that you gave us for shipping and information. So thank you, everybody, for attending. If you have any questions or if you have any follow-ups for Brian, you can always reach out to me, sloew@atsg.net. You can also find me from the invitation that I sent to everybody. You can just reply to that, and I'll be happy to answer any of your questions. But thank you for joining us for our first virtual coffee talk, and have a great day, everyone.
Thank you, guys.